What's up everyone, Ryan from Oakland Ghosts, and today we are going to talk about some drum tricks for dummies. Today we're going to be focusing primarily on something I like to call adding texture and layering, and these kind of simple tricks are just going to make your beats pop a little more, have a little more life, have a little more depth, and just be a little more interesting even on the simplest beats. I get a lot of comments and compliments on my drum sequencing on my songs, and I really appreciate that because, to be honest, I don't consider that one of my strong suits. But yeah, I'm going to show you some of the tricks I use to make even very simple beats come a little more alive. I'm going to be focusing on doing them on the Deluge. If you've watched my videos before, the Deluge is, among many other things, kind of my primary drum machine. I am going to be using some help from the D-Fam by Moog that's off camera, as well as the Castle B drum, which is kind of a modular weird drum synth kind of thing. Neither one of those are my primary drum machines. They're just not really adept at it. The D-Fam is probably closest. You can definitely get a boom bap beat going, at least with two voices. You can get a kick and a snare going, but that's about it. It's pretty limited. It's only 8 steps. So this is always my primary drum machine. Let's just kind of jump in and let me show you what I'm talking about. So this song just seemed like a great example because the bass beat is just so bare bones and simple. But by adding some texture, by adding some layering, I think I've livened it up quite a bit, and it works really well with the song. I'm not going to play the song. We're only going to focus on just the drums. But here is the beat that I started with. Now, when I start songs, I go one of two ways. Either I start with the beat or I start with the melodic content. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, I actually start with the melodic content. So what I'll do is I'll usually just go in to a kit, and I will straight up, usually just the 808, because that's just the first kit. I'll just do kicks 4 on the floor. And basically what I'm doing is I'm just using that as a metronome, and then I'll build out a lot of the melodic content. And then once I got kind of a core structure of the song, then I'll go in and I'll start working on my beat. And that's where I'll change from the original 4 on the floor. The first step that I do is I just, even in that 808, I'll just come up with a rough beat. And you'll see how simple and stupid this beat is, like right off the bat. It's nothing fancy. This is what I came up for the song I'm working on now. I mean, like I said, there's really not that much to this. It's not very fancy. And so the first thing that I'll do is once I've moved on from that 4 on the floor and I've gotten kind of the core beat, and most of the times I am just using just kick and snare at first. I like to keep it really simple, and I like to really focus on building my beats specific to the song I'm working. Sometimes it is a 4 on the floor beat, but in this case it wasn't. But yeah, I'll kind of stick with just the kick and snare. And then I'll just audition a bunch of different ones of just the stock kits that come with the Deluge. And I'll do that until I come, with something that makes sense, that's kind of close to what I'm looking for. In this case, this was as close as I got for that song to the sounds that I was kind of after, but they're still not right. Okay? And so at that point, after I've kind of got just a rough beat, what I'll do is I'll copy that over into a custom kit, and I'll make my own kit. And that's where I'm going to start layering things and where I'm going to start picking my own sounds. I have a very big sample library, but I still build a custom kit pretty much for every song. I find my own sounds, and I don't save these kits. They're really specific to the song. I'm just looking for sounds that make sense in the context of the broader sound design for the song. And in this one, as you'll see, this is the same beat, but I started picking my own kicks. And the first thing that I did, as you can see, maybe what'll make sense is I actually have 2 kicks, and this is where layering comes in, and I have 2 snares. I layer sounds on top of each other to get a more accurate sound that I'm looking for. I don't just always snick with one snare or one kick, unless it works, but it doesn't always work. Most of the time I'm layering at least 2 to really complete the sound. And so for the first one, I'm still playing the old one. Whoops. So let's mute that guy and let's turn on my custom kit. So right now we're just listening to one of the kicks. This is the first kick that I added. And I knew what I wanted was I wanted something that was a little more cavernous. And so this particular kick, I've manipulated it, I've made some effects on it, but you can hear it kind of sounds like a kick through a room mic, which is what I was going for. So that's one kick, and then I've added another kick on top that's a little more of the body. So together it sounds like that, right? Same kick pattern. So that's the first step, is layering a couple sounds, manipulating the, I've adjusted the EQ, I've adjusted, cutoff frequencies and all that kind of stuff. I've added a lot, but together those two sounds like that. The next thing I did was I found a snare that I liked, and that, in this case, it was this one. I have added a little bit of delay automation on there. So that's the bass snare sound. But again, that one's a little snappy, but I wanted a little crack, almost like a rim shot, to go on top of that. So here we go with the two of them together. So right there's my snare kick pattern. Same thing that, it's exactly the same pattern. Let's compare them. So this was the original, my simple one that I was just, brainstorming on. And then this is the one that we created with the custom kit. Same pattern. Same pattern. Only difference is there's a little bit of automation on the delay. Now, the other things that I've done, and this is a cool little trick that you could do. So one thing that I've done to kind of break up the rhythm on all these is I like to adjust the velocity on all the different notes. So what I'll do a lot of times is I'll go in here, and you can see if you hold it on a per step basis, you can twist this and you can get different velocities. And so that's kind of the volume at which the sample is going to play, right? So anytime I have two hits, I pretty much always do the first hit a little softer. And that's because, if I was a drummer, when I'm doing two quick hits, usually the second hit's a little harder. So what I'll do is I'll bring this one down. As you can see, I've done it down to like 55, but the second hit is up higher. And then I'll also just go in and I'll kind of adjust some of these. So this one's at 69, this one's at 64, which is the bass. And I'll do that across the board on all the different hits. I've done the same thing on the snare. Same reason. I just want a little differentiation so it's not as robotic and it's not hitting at the same volume every time. And the other thing that I've actually done on the snare, and this is a trick that I do a lot of times as well, is so let's say we're looking at this snare right here. As you can see, I roll off some of the cutoff filter, and what you can do is you can go to frequency, and as you can see, I have the LPF frequency. It's almost all the way up there. It's at 44, but I have that going to random, and if you look at the random, it's only by a little. I've got like 2. And so that's an attenuator, right? And so what I'm doing is I'm basically making it so that every time that note triggers, the frequency cutoff is going to be a little bit different. And it's not a lot. On a snare, I wouldn't go so heavy. On hi-hats, I would use quite a bit higher. And what that's going to do is make each hit sound a little bit different. And that just adds a little more life. That's another just super quick trick that I use a lot of times. That's the first step. That's layering, right? That's adding a couple sounds on top of each other. We're gonna get into texture in just a minute. And for this beat, I also added a couple more sounds here like this. Let's put them in. Another couple simple patterns. Now that's cool. That's already adding a little more life as opposed to this. Let's listen to the old one again. So that's what it was. Here's where we are. That's already feeling a little more oomph, and it works with the song really well. But I'm not done. That's still a pretty simple beat. I don't even have a hi-hat pattern on there yet. I don't have anything. And now, while I'm doing these next techniques, what I call adding texture, I'm doing these with some of my outboard gear. I have done them on the Deluge. You can do them on the Deluge. In fact, RSKT has a great patch. If you don't know RSKT, RSKT, check him out. He has an excellent video manual series on the Deluge, and he also has a sample pack out there. One of the things in that sample package is textures, which you can use to do something similar to that I'm going to do for the next step. So what I've done in the next step is I've sampled into the Deluge from the Castle B drum, a pattern that I built over there. It's just a weird... If you heard this sample, let's just listen to it by itself. This is what and I've manipulated the hell out of it. I've added, I've adjusted cutoff, I've added delay and reverb and bit crush. I've manipulated the sound further in the Deluge, but super weird. Like, this wouldn't make any sense by itself as a drum beat. But when you add it on top of the main beat, that already sounds sick. It just adds some movement, it adds some depth, it adds some texture, it adds these interesting, weird percussive elements that just gives the listener something to think about, but also just, it makes the whole thing feel a little more alive. Like, again, like let's just listen to it by itself. It's just super weird. It doesn't make any sense on its own. But you throw it with the beat. Texture. So now the next thing that I've done, how would I go about making that? I would just make a weird beat and I'd resample it and I'd bring it back in right on the Deluge. Or like I said, you could use RSKT's sound pack, which is free. Let's see if I can find an example of one of his. So we're gonna go Shift, New Kit. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna go down to, I think I have a folder for him. Yeah, there it is, RSKT. And, oh, he calls them FILLZ. That's what he called them. FILLZ, the second pack here. And you'll listen, they're all at 120 BPM, so you'd have to resample them to, or retime them and stretch them to fit your particular beat. But he has a bunch of similar things that I just did, that I built myself on the Castle drum. See, it's just weird stuff like this. And he has a whole folder, he has folders and folders and folders of them, and they're just kind of abstract percussive elements. And you can actually stack a bunch on top of each other, then resample that, and do the same thing that I've done with my song here. I have to add one now that I've built the stupid kit. But it's the same idea. It's just adding these weird percussive elements that you can stack on top of each other to just add some depth and texture to your drum tracks. And so I've also built a second thing similar to that, this weird FILLZ, or what I call texture. So I've also built another kind of texture layer on the DFAM. DFAM, you can make some cool drum beats, but I find it works better for adding texture to existing beats. So same thing, similar to what I did with the Castle drum, I built a weird kind of texture on the DFAM. This one is a little more high-end, so it kind of gives it a little more clicky, hi-hatty. I don't want to say hi-hatty because there is a little percussive in it too. Let's just listen to it. This is what it sounds like. So again, another pattern that we've just kind of thrown on top. So now let's put that with the Castle drum. And then we add our main beat, and it all comes together like this. So there you go. That's my demo. Texture. What did I call this again? Drum tips for dummies. I mean, I'm a dummy, but yeah. This is just a little thing that I like to do, even with the simplest beats. You can see how much it spiced it up. Just those simple elements. Like again, here, let's strip everything back and see where we started. So it went from that to this. I mean, the proof's in the pudding, guys. That objectively, that sounds freaking awesome. So I hope this made sense. I hope it was helpful. I hope it was inspiring. If you only have a Deluge, you can do all these tricks right on the Deluge. It's just about making other weird percussive patterns and layering them on top of each other to get some interesting elements, even on the simplest beats. I think this tasties up that beat quite a bit. I hope this was helpful. If it was helpful and inspiring, consider subscribing. It's a big help to the channel, and we appreciate you guys to no end. Until next time, this is Ryan with Oaken Ghosts. Ryan out.